Right, hello everybody and welcome back to Luke's Geeky Corner. I have never used that intro before in the history of this channel, but I might go forward with it, dependent on, let me know in the comments if you like that intro. I'm indifferent on it. I don't know. Just trying something new. The Casper slide part 2. And this time it's about to get funky. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just rambling now. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on the first Witcher novel, or I don't even know what to call it, because the first two, I did a video on The Last Wish, which was the first, Witcher, collection of short stories. And today I'm going to talk about The Sword of Destiny. I'm holding it awkwardly because I would usually hold it like this, but that's actually covering the name of the book, which I don't want to do. I'm just used to doing that because a comic book has the name of the book at the top. This has the author at the top and the name of the book at the... Yeah, you know, I'm rambling. I thought that this was markedly thicker than the first one. I don't know, that means nothing towards the quality. A longer book does not necessarily mean it's a better book. A longer book does not necessarily mean it's a worse book. But I would say the length of this is warranted because there is more to this, I think. In a literal sense, and in a sense of this book has more to say than The Last Wish did. The Last Wish is very much just here's the world, here's the Witcher, here's Geralt, here's some characters that he's going to be with along the way, and that's about it. This is the larger world, and this is what are the themes going to be as we go forward and as we go into the main Witcher story, which is, you know, the quest with Geralt and Ciri and meeting back up. This is essentially the second half of season 1, and I really like most of it. I do not like the start. I feel like the first story in this is very slow, and it doesn't really gain any relevance until the end of the book. And obviously a lot of the book, the from story 2 to basically the end is all kind of about Geralt, his relationship with Yennefer, and kind of understanding why Geralt is the way that he is, and how he gets to the point that he gets to at the end of the book, and how he gets to the point that he gets to, assumedly, at the start of Blood of Elves. And we kind of see, for the last 2 books, we've been following a Geralt that is kind of just moving through the world. He doesn't really have a place in it. He meets Yennefer and he thinks he's found his place, but his relationship with Yennefer is always stopping, always starting. They always fall apart and they always come back together. And they're told by this, golden dragon, essentially, in the first story, that they, yes, were meant to be together, but nothing will come of it, because neither of them can have children. And that kind of sets up Geralt for his relationships with everyone, and the only character that he seems to have any kind of actual friendship with is Dandelion, which is weird. And Dandelion isn't a character that I necessarily loved in either book. He's certainly more likable towards the end of this, because there is a chunk of this book, one of the stories that does kind of centre around him and centres around a friend that he has, and does give him a bit more depth than just the bard that is comic relief and a comic foil and is constantly sexualizing all of the women around him. There is a little bit more to him than that by the end of this book, and I'm interested to see where they take that character in regards to the backdrop of this like Nilfgaardian war that does start at the end of this book, and I'm interested to see how they got from the character that is Dandelion in this to the character that is Jaskier in the show, because that's obviously what that character is meant to be. It's meant to be this character, the Dandelion that's in this. And I find that leap and how they portray Dandelion in the show, or how they portray Jaskier in the show, I find that leap very difficult to make at this point. Slightly easier than it was at the end of the last book, but still, it's a difficult point to make. It's a difficult leap to make. Yennefer, I firmly believe, was completely miscast in the show. I don't think the actress that they've got in the show has the kind of gravitas, where I think Henry Cavill pulls off Geralt really well, because he's a big fan of the character anyway, and he just has a lot of similarities to that character. He's very stoic, and he plays that kind of stoic, emotionless character that doesn't really get a lot of lines quite well, and that's exactly what he needs to be. And it's a shame that we're not going to see that again going forward. But yeah, I really found myself enjoying the last couple of chapters. The last story in this, something more and Sword of Destiny. I know the book's called Sword of Destiny, and there's a story in the book called Sword of Destiny as well. Those two probably lead into the main series more so than any other story in the book, because those are your introductions to Ciri and the introductions to why Ciri is so important, both to Geralt and to the story as a whole. And those are where I was like, right, I'm hooked now. I'm in for the long haul, and I'm excited to see that character grow and evolve. And I'm excited to see Geralt grow and evolve throughout this narrative with Ciri alongside. Ciri's introduction, she is annoying, but I feel like she's meant to be. I feel like we're meant to see a marked difference between how Ciri is when she first meets Geralt and how Ciri is at the end of the book. And there is a marked difference because of what that character has been through between essentially the space of a year between the penultimate story in the book and the ultimate story in the book. And where it ends is just Geralt and Ciri riding off into the sunset, about to essentially begin the main story proper. I'm in this series now. I'm properly on board with it. And the second half of this, essentially from the second story of this, that deals with Geralt and Yennefer and their relationship, and that was my favourite part of the of the last book, and it's my favourite part of this book. It's just everything surrounding that does seem to have been more fleshed out, and the characters have been given more character and more agency, and I felt emotionally connected to characters I didn't feel emotionally connected to before, and I felt interested in what was going on. I do want to find, there is some, like, actual, like, issues with the book that I found. The pacing was slow to start off with, but I feel like that was only the first story that kind of had that. Every other story, maybe the one in the middle, was a bit, like, I don't see where the, maybe it will become really important later on in the stories of these halflings, but I don't see at the moment why that was included. There's also technical problems with the book as a whole. Like, there's like, this is a proofreading and an editing thing, and I think it might even be a problem with the translation, is that there's, like, you notice there, that's not the end of the paragraph. That's not even the end of the sentence. The line is read like that, and then the sentence ends there. That kind of weirded me a bit. I don't know if it was because of how they wanted to format the book and how many pages they wanted, or if it's a problem with the translation as a whole. Because I did notice there's still a bit of clunky dialogue, a bit of clunky writing, and the language is difficult, to say the least. The language that's used is clunky at best. I still think that there's a very good story that's being told here, and the world is interesting, and Geralt as a character is, you know, someone that you want to root for and you want to see do well. And there's a specific scene that is right at the end of the book where Geralt goes to this memorial site where essentially there was this last stand of the sorcerers that's actually shown in the show. I don't know if it gets shown in the books. It might be in the first one, but the last stand of the sorcerers, and he goes there expecting to see Yennefer's name on the memorial, and he thinks he does, and he sees what he imagines is death standing over him, and he has a conversation with death. And that scene very nearly broke me to tears. It's one of the most well written and just somber moments in a book that doesn't have a lot of those. Like, when, like, there's a lot of intense conversation, there's a lot of action sequences. I feel like the action sequences get a bit muddled in this. Maybe that's just me, maybe that's because I'm not used to reading an action sequence yet. I'm used to seeing it in a comic book or seeing it in a movie, but I'm not used to reading it yet and visualizing that in my head. So when I read things like The Witcher pirouetted, I imagine it like friggin' ballet. I don't imagine it like a fight. Like, what I'm imagining probably isn't what the author wants me to, and I don't know if that's a problem with the book or a problem with me just not being used to that way of, not being used to this kind of form of media yet. But yeah, I'm on board with this now more than I was at the end of the last book. Certainly more than I was at the end of the last book. I can't say that I fully enjoyed both books in entirety. I don't think anyone will. And know if you're going to get into this, read the Last Wish first. Even though it was published after, it definitely is meant to be read first. This doesn't have that kind of overarching story or that thing of Geralt is in a place telling people about these things that happen. This is more so like we're going from one story to the next, to the next, to the next. And where we end up is like you're going into the main like saga after this. And that's interesting. I don't know if I prefer this way or that way. I just think it's like two different styles. Like this is written to be like any of the stories in this could be edited, taken out, and released as their own like mini book, and you can read them you can read them on their own, divorced from the rest of the book. And I feel like that's clever in a way, but it definitely reads better as a collection together, because there is a definite pace, and there is a build up in like stakes, a build up in emotional weight as well, and there's a build up in like the amount of action in each book as well. And as I would even say, a build up in quality between each story as well. With the last one being the one that did genuinely make me feel like, oh my god. So yeah, The Witcher Sword of Destiny is my favourite out of the two so far. I know there's only two, but this is better than Last Wish in my opinion, just because I feel like the stories in this did hit me more, and it does set up. This kind of sets up the world more so as a whole than The Last Wish did. The Last Wish was definitely just an introduction to Geralt as a whole. I do like learning about worlds. I feel like that's why I really like starting games, and that's why I really like first games in a series as well. I just like learning about the characters, learning about the worlds, and then when we're in it, to be fair, I like being in it as well, but I like beginnings of adventures. I like groups coming together, and that's not necessarily what this is, but it is leading to that, and it's getting to that. We're definitely getting to the Fellowship, even though this definitely isn't written to be a team or a group coming together. This is more like giving Geralt a reason to be more than just a guy who roams around the world, who grunts his way through the world, occasionally fighting monsters. This is a reason to give him a purpose and to give him a thing to do. And I'm really interested to see where this book goes, especially going out of this short story format into a big, long, epic saga. I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that. Let me know in the comments below if you've read The Witcher Sword of Destiny, if you've read the whole Witcher series. Please refrain from spoiling it in the comments, A, for my sake, B, for the sake of anyone else watching these that is in any way wanting to jump onto these books. I highly recommend doing so, especially after reading this one, because what I've read so far has been very good quality, and even as someone who doesn't read fantasy novels or novels in general as a whole. This is, I said in my video on The Last Wish that I didn't think that this was the greatest jumping on point for someone wanting to get into fantasy, or someone wanting to get into reading as a whole. And while I still say that some of the language in this is a bit janky, and because it is a translated book, it doesn't read the easiest or the smoothest, I still think, because A, the books are relatively thin compared to other fantasy titles, and B, that whole short story kind of way of doing it, it does give you very clear, like, this is, like, you can get through one a day. And it's a relatively small cast. When you look at things like Lord of the Rings, you look at things like Percy Jackson has a small cast, but that's also like young adult, and I'd probably say that that's a really good first series as well, or thing to jump into if you're looking to jump into reading, because that's where I started. I picked out Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief out of my school library, and I blasted through it in like a week, and I remember that book being really good, and I remember being really disappointed by the film adaptation of it. I remember liking the first like few minutes and then being like, oh, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, they didn't do this. I think that was my first time being hypercritical on anything, on any like piece of media, was with the Percy Jackson movie. And now I'm that critical, even more critical with like the Marvel movies that come out. By the way, I didn't make a video on it, but Deadpool and Wolverine, I talked about it a bit on my Twitch channel, but I did really like that movie. It's really good. It's really, really good. But we're not talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, we're talking about The Witcher. That being said, a certain Henry Cavill does, spoiler alert, but a certain Henry Cavill is in that movie, and it is glorious. it is one of the best cameos, followed up with another one of the best cameos. It's a series of the best cameos yet in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I'm pretty much now just going to treat as cameo porn. And if there's more to it than that, then bonus points. But I'm going to judge each movie by the quality of their cameos now. And Deadpool and Wolverine, by the quality of the cameos, is like a 10 out of 10. But anyway, Witcher: The Last Wish, highly recommend it. Let me know if you've read this, the series, the first book, the second book. Let me know whether you dropped off with this one, because I've heard a lot of people, I've heard like 2 people, but I've heard a few people say that they've started reading, got to the end of this one, and just gave up after this one. And after reading it, I'm like, how did you do that? How did you get to the end of this book, where this book ends, and decide, nah, not for me? I get everyone has different tastes, but this is right up my alley. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.